Hi, I'm Charlie Kemp. I'm going to talk about progress toward a new kind of assistive robot. So I'm going to wear two hats during this talk. I am an associate professor in the Department of Biomedical Engineering, and I am also co-founder and chief technology officer of Hello Robot Inc. And I have a conflict of interest because if Hello Robot does well, I do well. When they sell robots, I earn royalties, and if the value of the company goes up, I do well because I own equity. So in 2007, I founded my lab, the Healthcare Robotics Lab at Georgia Tech. And we focused on a particular type of robot, mobile manipulators. These are robots that can navigate in the world and can physically manipulate it. And specifically, we focused on mobile cobots because they're collaborative robots. These are robots that can physically interact with people. And today, what I'm hoping to do is convince you of three things. First of all, that mobile cobots can assist people with disabilities. Second, that mobile cobots are becoming commercially viable. And then finally, that there's a lot of research required to realize the full potential of mobile cobots as assistive devices. And at the bottom here, you can see various mobile cobots that my lab developed over the years. So this is an exciting time for robotics because there are a number of assistive robots that are commercially available and helping people today, including robots that mount to a wheelchair, robots that can be on a desktop, and robots that mount to your body, such as prostheses and exoskeletons. And they all have particular advantages and ways that they can help people. Mobile cobots are different. They operate independently from the user, or at least they can operate independently from the user. They're not attached to a wheelchair or the body or the environment. They're able to, for example, be tasked to go do something, such as retrieve an object or deliver an object at an opportune moment. You also don't have to put it on or take it off, which can sometimes be a barrier to acceptance and use for some assistive technologies. Another aspect of this that I think is promising is mobile cobots can potentially help a really diverse array of people. And in my lab, we've worked with people who are spending a lot of time in bed, or they're in a wheelchair, or maybe they can walk, and yet they could still benefit from this assistive technology. I'm also optimistic because my hope is that this can be a general purpose type of technology that's very versatile. And so much like personal computers and smartphones have been this general purpose technology that people with disabilities have benefited from and people in healthcare have benefited from, maybe mobile cobots can be used in lots of different contexts, including healthcare and as assistive devices. If that's possible, it's exciting because it might overcome one of the great challenges of assistive technology. Is just niche assistive technology tends to be very high cost and the quality can be questionable. And the same sort of thing for medical devices. The costs can be extremely high. So if it could be a mass market technology, that's an exciting prospect for me. So my lab has worked with many people, hundreds of people really, from different populations. We've looked at lots of different tasks, such as feeding assistance and medicine delivery and hygiene and even dressing. And we found in general people are really open to this technology, and we've shown successful proofs of concepts in laboratory settings. One particular, we've had lots of collaborations, but one particular collaboration that's been really meaningful that I want to focus on in this talk is with Henry and Jane Evans, which you see here. We've worked with them for over 10 years. So Henry, unfortunately, he had a brainstem stroke relatively young, and he has severe quadriplegia. And Jane is his wife and primary caregiver. She helps him with things during the day. Unfortunately, Henry also can't speak. And mostly he has motion of his head and motion of his thumb, and that at least allows him to control computers because he has a head tracker, so that can dictate where the cursor moves on the screen, and he can click a mouse button. So by accessing the worlds of computers, he also is able to access robots and control robots. And so we first started working with Henry and Jane through Willow Garage, which was a company in California. And we all worked together. One of the first things we looked at was shaving assistance, because this was something that Henry and Jane wanted us to explore. So my lab created a semi-autonomous shaving system. This is a picture from back in, I think, 2012 of Henry using this system to shave himself in his home in California. And prior to that, interestingly, Henry actually helped me shave by controlling this system from California to help me shave in Atlanta, which was really, really a cool experience. Later on, Henry and Jane began attending my lab's weekly meetings, and that was hugely beneficial because they could provide rapid feedback on whether we were going in interesting, useful directions. And it also helped people better understand Henry's and Jane's needs. Now, the next thing I'm going to focus on is later work that involved Phil Grice, who's shown here. He earned his PhD on this exciting system that I'm going to talk about now that enabled Henry to control a mobile manipulator to do lots of different things. What they did was Henry and Phil worked together iteratively over 5 years to create this web-based interface that enabled Henry to use this complicated robot. So here it's looking around, here it's illustrating how you can drive the robot, and you'll see a red mark here, which is where the tactile sensing on the arm is in contact. It has special augmented reality interfaces for manipulation, and all of this was iteratively developed specifically to enable Henry to effectively use the robot. And so Henry would remotely control the robot in our lab. He would be in California, we would be in Atlanta, and then provide feedback to Phil, and they would discuss what would be possible. It was a very successful iterative approach. And then this culminated in a study in Henry's home, where he used the robot in the system that they had developed for 7 days straight. And this is some video of him using the robot, so he was able to use the system to feed himself. He was also able to use it to perform a task he was very interested in, which is to apply lotion to his legs because they get dry. So he was able to do this himself while he was in bed. And then this was especially interesting because none of us had thought of this before. While using the robot, Henry discovered, look, I can use it in this way to be able to scratch itches on my head and cleanse my face. And that's the exciting thing about empowering people to use a system like this and to discover how it can work best for them. Of course, all of our team was interested in more than just Henry and Jane benefiting. So Phil recruited people with similar significant impairments to Henry from across the United States. And these 15 participants participated in a study by controlling a robot in our lab in Atlanta using this interface that he and Henry developed. Now, the people who were involved in this study, their disabilities were the result of many different types of causes. And also, interestingly, they used lots of different computer access devices, including trackballs and touchpads, eye gaze, and even speech. And one of the exciting things about this is the reason this worked is because it was a web-based interface taking advantage of web-based standards. So people could use whatever method they preferred and the methods they typically used to use the internet and use websites. So this is a video of a person performing a modified clinical assessment of manipulation skills, the action research arm test. So a person is remotely controlling the robot in my lab to perform this modified clinical assessment. And the exciting thing was that as part of this study, our results suggest that people using this system would be able to have a meaningful improvement in their ability to manipulate the world and control their world. They perceived it as being a useful system, both for manipulation tasks as well as self-care tasks. In addition, they perceived it as being relatively easy to use. So those were really exciting results because, yes, it was slow. That was a limitation. In fact, those videos are highly sped up. But as Henry has noted to us multiple times, he has time. What he wants is to be empowered to do things for himself, to be able to do things in the way he wants to do them, to have independence, to have autonomy through the robot. So the speed is not as much of a concern for him. And people did also have errors, but they were still perceived as being good enough to be useful, useful enough, easy enough to use. Depth perception was also an issue that sometimes resulted in errors. So all of these were limitations, but none of them were something that would make it so this couldn't be useful near term. Problem was, and the biggest issue in my mind as a limitation, this was work in, I think, September of 2016, Phil was beginning to wrap up the studies, was the robot. The robot is a major limitation because the robot is hugely expensive, extremely heavy, and very large. And there's no way, well, the other limitations, yeah, you could improve them with time, but the robot could potentially be useful to people near term. This limitation, the specifics of the robot, how expensive and heavy and large it was, I didn't see a way of overcoming it. It's just didn't seem like it would work. And so that frustration in 2016, after that promising study, led to Invention. I had this notion that, look, the actuators for this type of robot are the main drivers of the cost and complexities of mobile manipulators. So I wanted to try to design a robot that minimized the actuator requirements while maximizing the capabilities. So to make it more affordable, compact, lightweight, human-centric, and capable. And you can see my initial notes from back in 2016. Shortly after I had the initial ideas, I brought in Henry Cleaver, a student of mine, and together we worked, and he elaborated on the ideas, and we worked together to create a prototype and invent this new kind of robot. So you can see the early prototype from March from my lab. Henry and I worked until July 31st, 2017, and then after that, Dr. Aaron Ensinger and I formed a company. Now, why do we do that? Well, the thing Henry and I realized was what was really important was to make a high-quality robot and to make more of them so that we could actually conduct the research we wanted to conduct. And we needed high quality, more than one, and that's just not something my lab was equipped to do. That's something that a commercial entity would be more appropriate for. And I was fortunate because Dr. Aaron Ensinger, shown in the photo, he was at Google X. He got it when I talked with him. He was excited about it, and he chose to become CEO and lead this endeavor to commercialize this technology from my lab. So we co-founded HelloRobot on August 1st, 2017, and 3 years later, we had a research robot product, which you also can see, which I'll talk more about now, which is called Stretch. So when we founded the company, something that was important to both of us was to really prioritize assistive use cases for this technology. And to make sure that we stayed true to that, our founding advisors were Henry and Jane Evans and Vincent Duro, because not only are they all experts in this type of technology, they also understand and care deeply about assistive technology. It's also the case, which was incredibly fortunate, is that Henry and Vincent are both experts in terms of, or have expertise in startups. They've both been involved with startups, and so they provided just this wealth of wisdom that helped our company as we were creating and commercializing this technology. So 3 years later, this is our launch party. It was in the middle of the pandemic, so it was virtual. You can see Henry and Jane there. You can see Vincent. You can see a number of other people from the team. It was an exciting time. And now I'm going to show you the launch video. So this is the video that we launched with. was it. That was our launch video. And we were really fortunate. We had a successful launch. Press was very favorable about it. We even won an award from Silicon Valley Robotics. It was great, good reception. So one of the surprises for us was we really expected to primarily sell to academic researchers and really to focus on academic researchers who were doing assistive robotics research. But as we got out there and people began to inquire, what we found is about half of our sales were going to industry for tasks like I'm going to show you here. So this was really exciting because what they saw in it, really, in my mind, was evidence for this being a win for inclusive design, because people wanted to be able to have the robot pick up things in human environments, do inspections in human environments, but they wanted a robot that would be easy for people to work with and that they could work closely with. And those attributes of the robot came exactly from its origins from assistive robotics research. And so Stretch, the robot, is both supporting assistive robotics research, but it's also creating all these new opportunities for other use cases that benefit from that inclusive design approach that we took from the beginning. Something else I'm excited about is Hello Robot's transparency and openness. It's a wholly US-owned company. It assembles its robots in the US in its headquarters in California. As a simple pricing model, everything's included, the computation, the sensors, the software. All of the software is open source, and you can find it on GitHub, including low-level motor controllers all the way up to autonomy demos. It also, Hello Robot releases open hardware accessories, just 3D printable tools that can be attached to the end of the arm. And finally, there's an open forum to help the community come together so people can help one another. And this approach of transparency and openness has really been resonating with people. We had a community event 8 months after launch, and members of all of these organizations were at the event being welcoming, helping each other, and showing a real passion for what the future could be for this technology. Many of the researchers here were assistive robotics researchers, and there were people with disabilities present too. For me personally, that was just so rewarding. And it's good that this community is forming, because one thing that's been very much emphasized to me through this entrepreneurial adventure is that there's a lot of research required in order for mobile cobots to truly reach their potential to help people. It's a versatile but complex emerging technology. That versatility creates this opportunity to assist diverse people with disabilities, but it's going to take a broad spectrum of research to really deliver on that potential. Everything from detailed clinical work to longer-term work involving artificial intelligence. And I truly believe that now is a great time to be working in this area. It's a great time to be conducting research and to coming together as a community to work on mobile cobots as assistive technology, taking them seriously as assistive technology. Because what happens in 10 years, it depends on today. And if we work together, I think mobile cobots will be fun, useful, and inclusive.